The stray dog first showed up outside the station on a rainy Thursday evening. Officer Ben Walker had just finished a long shift, stepping out into the drizzle to see the scruffy creature sitting by the front steps. The dog's fur was matted, its ribs visible through its thin frame, but its eyes, haunted and piercing, caught Ben's attention. "Hey, buddy," Ben said, crouching down. The dog didn't flinch, didn't growl, just stared at him with an unsettling stillness. It stayed there for hours, unmoving, even as the rain grew heavier. By the time Ben's shift ended, the dog was still there, and something in its quiet persistence made him open the passenger door of his truck. "All right, fine," Ben muttered. "You can crash with me for the night." The dog climbed in without hesitation. Over the next few days, Ben tried to find the dog's owner. He posted on community boards, called local shelters, and even asked around the neighborhood, but no one claimed it. The dog, whom he eventually named Shadow, seemed to have no intention of leaving. It followed him everywhere, from the kitchen to the station. It slept at the foot of his bed, its watchful eyes scanning the room even in the dark. Ben couldn't explain it, but there was something about Shadow that felt off. The dog wasn't aggressive, but it was too quiet, too observant, as if it were waiting for something. One evening, after a late patrol, Ben noticed Shadow grow restless. The dog paced by the front door, whimpering softly. Then, without warning, it bolted outside, barking for the first time since Ben had taken it in. "Shadow, wait!" Ben grabbed his jacket, sprinting after the dog as it ran through the dark streets, its barks echoing in the still night. Shadow led him to an overgrown lot on the edge of town, a place Ben hadn't been to in years. The lot was empty save for a crumbling foundation and a rusted swing set, barely visible in the moonlight. Shadow stopped abruptly, sniffing the ground, and began to dig furiously. "Shadow, what are you?" Ben froze as he stepped closer. Something was buried there. The discovery shook the town. The remains belonged to a young girl, Sarah Whitman, who had gone missing 2 years earlier. The case had gone cold, no leads, no suspects. But now, with Shadow's discovery, everything changed. Ben couldn't stop thinking about it. Shadow had led him directly to the site, as if the dog had known all along. It wasn't until he requested access to Sarah's case file that he found the connection. A photograph taken months before Sarah's disappearance showed her playing in her backyard, alongside a dog, Shadow. The revelation hit Ben like a punch to the gut. Shadow had belonged to Sarah. The dog hadn't just been a stray, it had been wandering, waiting, searching for someone to follow, someone who could help. Ben felt a deep, twisting guilt. Shadow had been trying to tell him something all along, and he hadn't listened soon enough. As the investigation into Sarah's death reopened, Ben couldn't help but notice Shadow's behavior growing more erratic. The dog would bark at nothing, pacing in the middle of the night, its ears twitching as if it were hearing sounds no one else could. One evening, while reviewing the case notes at home, Ben heard a low growl from the living room. Shadow stood by the window, its hackles raised, teeth bared, staring into the dark. Ben grabbed his gun, stepping outside to find nothing. Just the empty street and the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. But Shadow wouldn't calm down. It wasn't until Ben closed the door that he noticed the faint muddy footprints leading away from his porch. The investigation uncovered more than Ben could have imagined. Sarah's remains were tied to a suspect who had fled town shortly after her disappearance. The man was arrested within weeks, but Shadow's role in the discovery made Ben the subject of endless questions and interviews. How did the dog know? Reporters asked. Ben didn't have an answer. Even after the case was closed, the strange incidents continued. Shadow would still pace at night, barking at unseen figures, whining softly as it stared at corners of the house. One night, Ben woke to find Shadow standing in the doorway of his bedroom, staring at him with those same haunted eyes. He swore for a moment that he heard faint laughter, like a child's, echoing through the room. Months later, the case was officially closed. Sarah's family thanked Ben for giving them closure, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't truly over. Shadow remained by his side, quieter now, but still watchful, still waiting. And every so often when the house was silent and the world felt still, Ben would catch a glimpse of something in Shadow's eyes, a sadness, a knowing, as if the dog were carrying more than just memories, as if it knew something Ben never would, the end.